unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new unsettling force, and we're here, a new unsettling force for liberation. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We're a new unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new unsettling force, and we're here, a new unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains.
And everybody unsettling force, we are powerful, and we unsettling force, we're here, and everybody unsettling force for liberation. We have nothing to lose.
When we lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
Nothing to lose but our dreams. Nothing to lose but our dreams. Nothing to lose but our dreams.
Good evening and welcome everyone to our first service of our Black August season with Freedom Church of the Poor, the Cairo Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice, Black Christians for Palestine, and the Highlander Center, or Highlander Research and Education Center. We'll go into a little bit about this Black August season with Freedom Church of the Poor. Black August is a tradition that originated in California's prisons in the 1970s after the deaths of Jonathan and George Jackson and other incarcerated Black people who sought freedom. We take time in August to lift up past and current organizations and revolutionaries who are in the battle with, incarcerated, and or assassinated by the US state apparatus. It is also a time for us to prepare for what lies ahead by building and deepening relationships, drawing on this rich history of our movement to develop our leaders for future struggle, to share song and music and art, and to be in spiritual community. In this season of Black August, we come together to confront the pervasive state violence affecting our communities. Our challenges are many, from the ongoing violence, death, and genocide in Palestine, to the criminalization of our homeless siblings, to the growing political influence of white Christian nationalist ideology, and the increased repression of our movements for justice. In these times of crisis, it is crucial to cultivate clarity of mind, body, and spirit, drawing strength from our ancestors who have come before us, and giving us powerful tools to sustain ourselves during periods of struggle. This Black August, we honor the moral and political leaders and patron saints of the movement, like Bernice Johnson Reagon and Paul Robeson, who taught us how to unite and organize in challenging times. Together, let's lift up their legacy and build a stronger, more committed community. And for those of you all who are new to these services or are returning, we feel like it's always important to ground ourselves in the mission of the Freedom Church of the Poor. The Freedom Church of the Poor is a spiritual and political home for movement leaders. We believe in the fundamental dignity and value of all life, and in a world of abundance where we can all thrive. We gather as a community of faith to support and care for each other. We commit to realizing the abundant world God promises by identifying, developing, and uniting leaders who will build up a movement to end poverty led by the poor. In this community, and through our commitment to this struggle, we also seek to rediscover and share a vision and practice of religion that is rooted in truth, justice, and love. Thanks, Adam, for sharing. And so we wanted to start off this service this evening. The title of the service is Come and Go With Me to That Land. And this entire Black August season, as you know, we shared before, we're really exploring some of our patron saints of the movement, Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagon and Paul Robeson. And so all of our services are named after songs that they either shared or, you know, as individuals or part of groups and collectives. And this first service, Come and Go With Me to That Land, we're going to be reflecting on and gleaning lessons from uprisings of the past. And the first uprising that we wanted to start with is the Watts Uprising of 1965. And Come and Go With Me to That Land originally was recorded in 1930, another time of immense crisis, by Blind Willie Johnson, called Come and Go With Me to That Land. And the lyrics were very simple. It was a song that came out of the church. It was a song that was used beginning in probably the early 1800s by enslaved Black workers as a sort of call and response song that the workers would share among each other to remember that there is that this world, this situation that they were in as enslaved workers was unjust and was actually against the want that God had for all of his people, the expectation of a better life in which everyone was able to live and love and be free. And it's a reminder that they shared with one another that that they deserved this life, that there was enough for everyone. And that it was so important to, I think, to remind each other that they were God's children and that God wanted better for them. And so the lyrics were pretty simple, and I'll share them with you. So let's actually. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. I got a brother in that land. I've got a brother in that land. I've got a brother in that land where I'm bound, 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 where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. And what I really just love about this song is that, you know, there's an invitation to go with me, that there's enough room for everyone, that freedom is for everyone, that liberation is for everyone, that justice is for everyone, and that we're bound for that,
That is the future. No matter what the circumstances are now, understanding that God, that the higher power, that that enslavement was unjust and that it would not last forever. And also that people were going to fight and they were going to go to that land. They weren't going to just stay where they are. They were going to go to that land, and that they wanted everyone to go with them. And so with that being said, we're going to move into reading of our sacred text and then invite our dear comrades to join us in reflection. The piece that we're pulling from is taken from Exodus 16, 2 through 4 and 9 through 15. The whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat and ate our fill of bread, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I am going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. And that way I will test them, whether they will follow my instruction or not." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaining." And as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the Israelites, they looked toward the wilderness, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the complaining of the Israelites. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall have your fill of bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God." In the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as the frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat." So for our opening reflection, I would like to invite Willie Baptist of the Cairo Center, the National Union of the Homeless, the University of the Poor, and so many other powerful organizations. And so, Willie, thank you for joining us for this service.
Thanks for having me. Okay, well, just 1 second. Okay, that was my boss lady giving me instructions. At any rate, I'm happy to be here and happy that you guys have invited me to comment on this day in August. August 11th, 1965. I was 17 years old. I was awakened to an uprising in Watts, the ghetto of Watts, which inaugurated a whole period of uprisings in the latter 60s. And every August, I'm reminded of my participation in that uprising. We had, when that whole period ended, the late 60s, you had anywhere between 250 to 300 cities that erupted, and violent protests against the insane and inhumane conditions that exist in the Black community in Watts. Problems of healthcare, problems of jobs, problems, all the problems that beset ghettos at that stage, definitely was the whole basis of that uprising. Um, when all was said and done, people who look back on that period, they compare it to the period that led to the Civil War, that included the Civil War, and said that this period of uprisings in Watts, Detroit, Newark, a number of other Black ghettos at that time was equivalent to the mass uprisings that betook this nation in the Civil War, that this was the largest and most violent uprising since the Civil War. And again, this was owing to excruciating conditions that exist in the Watts community. But its conditions today are visiting every poor community. The white slums, the Black ghetto, the brown barrios, the Native American communities and reservations. Everywhere there's poverty, you see this situation of crises, and the conditions for uprisings to take place this time threatens not just to happen in the Black community, but in all the other communities. And I think it's important for us to look back on this period and see what lessons that we can learn that can guide us in our commitment and convictions today in terms of, fighting for justice and fighting for society where you have poverty in the midst of plenty, unheard of abundance in the midst of abandonment happening to increasing segments of the population. And poverty today knows no color, although it's disproportionately affecting people of color, in particularly Black communities. The overwhelming majority of people who are affected by poverty and are dying as a result of poverty are poor whites. And I think the danger that exists as far as the powers that be is concerned, who are threatened by uprising, threatened by change, is that this thing is going to encompass more and more segments of the population across color lines, across gender, and every other lines of division. And I think this is a very important point that we need to look at. In the Carroll's Center, we call this moment in world history as a Carroll's moment, owing to some very basic shifts in the economy that is resulting in a growth of poverty and impoverishment. The so-called middle class, the so-called middle section of the population with, living wage incomes that are being depreciated and being lessened. People are being thrown into poverty. And this is result of some real changes in the economy where you have people who are pursuing wealth at the expense of many who are now being threatened or experiencing poverty. I think the thing that I want to really say secondly is that the Black community at that time was differentiated in terms of class divisions. You had, say, in South Central LA, you had the Watts community, which was the most impoverished community in the entire state of California. But you also had about maybe an hour away what we call the Black Beverly Hills. It was the Baldwin Hills, Black Baldwin Hills, where you had professional Black professionals who were had a middle income, and they were subjected to profiling by the police. But the concentration of the profiling and the concentration of police harassment was in the Watts community, in the poor Black community. And this was, replicated throughout the whole country. And I think that distinction should be understood, because I think when you see the problems that are happening today, it is not just a problem of color, even though Blacks who have endured this problem for a long time and in a very concentrated way, it is happening to increasing segments of the population. And at some point, that is not going to be accepted. People are beginning to fight in every way that they can fight, and we can see that today. You can see it in the struggles around healthcare. You can see it in the struggles around housing with the homeless. I'm an advisor of the Homeless Union, and homelessness is visiting every community. And this is in the richest country in the world that has the ability to produce a prefab house in 45 minutes. It has more empty houses than it have homeless families. And yet people in the richest country in the world go homeless. People in the richest country in the world are impoverished. And this is very explosive. People are not going to sit back and allow their families to starve. There's going to be a fight back, and there is beginning to be a fight back. And again, it's fine. You see it taking all forms, the students and the death crises, the whole response to the massacre in Gaza, in the Middle East, and how folks are responding to that is all evidence of a period of explosion. And I think the lesson for us is that when you have a big problem, you need a big movement. And a movement always starts with the development of committed, clear leaders, committed in their faith, clear in their understanding of the problems and what they're up against, and connected in a collectivity, in a freedom church that crosses color line, that can come together to move this country. And I think the lessons of Watts, and I'm still a student of Watts, is that there's no way we're going to move out of this predicament of poverty in the midst of plenty, of the inhumane treatment of folks and people dying as a result of poverty and homelessness, unless we find a way to build a movement where we're united across color lines, across all the lines of division, gender, what have you, and that we unite on a global level, that we unite with the brothers and sisters in Palestine, that we unite with the brothers and sisters in Latin America and Africa and in Europe, in Greek, that are suffering, that we build a powerful movement, built first of all among the least of these. And I think the religious message is for us to come together in community, where we truly love each other and love our neighbors in a real way, and show that love in action, in commitment, in clarity, in connectedness, and an understanding of how you go about coming together to really move this country and move the world. I can go on and on. With a name like Baptist, I have this tendency to want to preach, but I'm glad that we are looking at August, and I'm glad every year we look at August. And I think the Watts and the uprisings that took place in August should be looked at over and over again and studied to get lessons that we can use to guide our struggle today to justice. I think this is what God wants, and I think those of us who are committed to walk in the footsteps of Christ, we have to walk in those footsteps today toward justice. And it's not going to be an easy thing, but it's going to be a necessary thing. And for us to believe in what we believe in, we got to do the do. We just can't talk the talk. We got to walk the walk. That's the lessons of Watts.
Thank you.
Hope that makes sense. Did it make some sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. so much, Willie.
Mhm.
Next, I'd like to invite my dear sister, Reverend Dr. Savita Martin of the National Union of the Homeless and the National Welfare Rights Union to share a reflection. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's so good to be here among family, as Willie said. We're building this movement across our lines of division, and we're family. Right? And it's hard. The movement building is messy at times. It's like giving birth, right? It's painful, but in the end, we're there to see the growth and the transformation. And so I just want to reflect a little bit on just a couple of things. But right now, the scripture in Exodus 16, I know Willie and I, during the days of the Union of the Homeless, there was so many different memories that gave rise to the struggle and the power behind building power in the Union. With all the lessons that we pulled out of the mid 1980s, even up to the demise. But there's one particular moment out of many that I do want to reflect on, and that was during the Housing Now March, where we out the family of core leaders out of the National Union of the Homeless, so many can't be named right now. We descended into Washington, D.C., and we were expecting our siblings coming in from out of the streets and out of the shelters and the subway stations. They were coming in to march and to, demand that our voices are heard, right? That we are the workers. We are the ones that built this country, and we wanted to be heard. Well, we get to Washington, D.C., and everything that we thought we were going to have was reneged on, right? That meant beginning with the food. We stayed, or we were told to go in the back of the RFK Stadium. Now, that's where we had to stay. And that's where we were supposed to sleep for 3 days. No food, no water when we arrived there. We lived for 3 days on the ground on the Anacostia River that never dried. And so as I reflect on that scripture in Exodus 16, 13 through 36, when the Lord poured down the manna and the quail, by evening tide that day, when we arrived, by evening tide, the churches and different organizations had come together, rallied together to bring us food. And that food gave us strength for the next leg of the journey. And you can look at the rest of what happened in Takeover, in the documentary Takeover. So that was our quail and manna moment. So many memories in power that we had as a family building that movement during those years, where we know biblically that God stepped in because we hit the streets with our feet, prayed on our feet, and demanded dignity and fairness. So I just wanted to start with that reflection in the scripture and honor this season of Black August with one of my poems, if you don't mind. And it's entitled Black August, Rise and Revolt. Ashe. And in the heat of Black August, hearts ignite. Revolution's dawn breaks through the night. From shadows of prisons, voices resound. Echoes of warriors, their spirits unbound. Just as Bernice Reagon mentioned. their spirits unbound. George Jackson's cry, his fierce and strong call to justice, was where we belong. Through bars and walls, his message flies, a beacon of hope. A fire was in our eyes. Jonathan's courage, a brother embrace. Defiance in courtrooms. He had a fearless face. Blood of the martyrs, sacrifice deep. Their legacy, a promise we keep. And we wept. But Angela's wisdom was sharp as a blade. That sister was bad. A scholar's resolve, she's still unafraid. Her chains couldn't bind her, a spirit set free, an emblem of struggle for you and for me. Asada's flight to freedom's shore, a tale of escape forevermore. In Cuba's embrace, she found her peace. Her fight continues. Her strength won't cease. It's embedded in our cadre as they travel in big bridges. We see it from Asada's flight to freedom's shore, a tale of escape forevermore. Matulu's vision, a healer's touch, revolutionary dreams. He gave so much. In unity's embrace, we find our might, building our movement for justice and right. Fred Hampton's roar, a leader's pride. His life, a lantern, never to hide. Assassin's bullets tried to quell, but his dream lives on. And we rebel, and we rebel, and we rebel. Some nations cry for liberation, but the people want revolution. Black August's flame, a burning light, my God, guiding our steps through the night with the Willies and the Ciaras and the Adams and everybody, the lizards. We fight, we fight, we fight, we fight. Black August's flame, a burning light with the memories of everyone that's guiding our steps through the night, through Tubman, through Sojourner Truth, through Nelson Perry, wow, through the night, through the night, through the night, transformational change within our grasp. The Poor People's Campaign, the National Union of the Poor, the armies for health. Together, we rise. It's within our grasp. Together, we rise. In unity's claps. In streets, we march. In hearts, we chant. The welfare rights, we're on it. We're in the rant. For every soul and every chance, a revolution born from pain, a future forged from breaking chains. Black August, rise and revolt.
Yeah, that's my sister.
What? That was awesome. Holy smokes. Thank you so much, Reverend Savina. That was incredible. Whew. I'm gonna give that a moment. Mm. So before we go into prayers for the people and get into our call to action, wanting to pull out a few of the wanting to ask for folks who are logged on if you can share any prayers that you would like lifted up. Reverend Savina, that was a prayer in and of itself, but could you still do prayers for the people? Oh gosh. Okay. I didn't know Zoom was going to do that. Thank you. I mean, wow. So I just want to give folks some time to put in the chat any prayers that you want to lift up for the people. during this, and then I'll help stall a little bit because I didn't mention that earlier. But just to share that during this Black August season, we're going to release a bit of a study guide that will go along with our services that we're having on Sundays from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, and then the Bible studies that Black Christians for Palestine will be leading Wednesdays, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern. And we'll share out songs and poetry and share the sacred text that we'll be lifting up in the different services for folks to be able to reflect upon if you're not able to join live and you want to catch up later, or if you want, just to have some things to think about during this month of study, reflection, and preparation for struggle. We'll be offering that as a resource. And one of the, I wanted to actually pose some of the questions that Adam helped lift up in the study guide as it relates to this piece in Exodus that we shared tonight. Thank you again so much, Reverend Sabina. You just filled my heart with that reflection on it. But just for others to hold with you tonight, you can put it in the chat. You can put it, in the comments later, or, just carry it with you throughout the week. But just reflecting on what ways that we've grown weary in this struggle. We're in a very, protracted struggle, a long struggle, and just reflecting on the ways that we have grown weary. And in those times, like, who or what do we turn to in times of those of weariness? And then, what helps us continue in this struggle, knowing that it is a continuous struggle, and how do we support each other? And, I hope that for folks, Freedom Church can, be such a place. Out of many, I pray that you have many spaces, but for Freedom Church to be a place of renewal, of study, of reflection, of community. Like we shared, we really want to lift up Dr. Bernice Reagon Johnson, or Johnson Reagon, this Black August season. And with that, in reflection, I was thinking about this song/poem, I'm Gonna Stay on the Battlefield, that Sweet Honey and the Rock performed alongside Sonia Sanchez. All right. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield till I die. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield till I die. I had come into the city carrying life in my eyes amid rumors of death, calling out to everyone who would listen. It is time for us to move into another century. Time for freedom and racial and sexual justice. Time for women and children and men. Time for hands unbound. I had come into the city wearing peaceful breast, and the spaces between us smiled. I had come into the city carrying life in my eyes. I had come into the city carrying life in my eyes. And they followed us in their cars, with their computers, and their tongues crawled with caterpillars, and they bumped us off the road, turned over our cars, and they bombed our buildings. They killed our babies, and they shot our doctors, maintaining our bodies. And their courts changed into confessionals, but we kept on organizing. We kept on teaching, believing, loving, doing what was holy, moving us to a higher ground. Even though our hands were full of slaughtered teeth, but we held in our eyes delirious with grace. But we held out our eyes delirious with grace. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right till I die. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right until I die. Come. I say, come, you sitting still in domestic bacteria. Come, I say, come, you standing still in double-breasted mornings. Come, I say, come and return to the fight, this fight for earth, this fight for our children, this fight for our life. We need your hurricane voices. We need your sacred hands. I say, come, sister, brother, sibling, to the battlefield. Come into the rainforest. Come into the hood. Come into the barrio. Come into the schools. Come into the abortion clinics. Come into the prisons. Come and caress our spines. I say, come, wrap your feet around justice. I say, come, wrap your tongues around truth. I say, come, wrap your hands with deeds and prayers, you brown ones, you yellow ones, you black ones, you gay ones, you white ones, you lesbian ones. Come, come, come into this battlefield called life. Whew. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for putting your prayers in the chat. I'm going to pass it back over to my dear Reverend Dr. Savina to lead our prayers for the people.
Thank you. Thank you, Ciara. We are full. And now it's prayer time. And we're seeing the world with hands lifted up. This is a time to pray right now for all of our families. Just think about your families, extended families, movement families. Just pray for them. Pauline says she's holding August 6th and 9th, 1945 in her heart, remembering the dropping of the atom bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Prayers for all, including children who lost their lives, and for those today carrying the work of organizing to keep our earth habitable for all, and for changing the war economy and genocide. Adam is putting out prayers for families torn apart by the fear and hatred in our politics and media. Pray for them. Lord, hear our prayer. And Willie says, remembering Diane Bernard, Sue Ying, Don Baptiste, General Baker, Chris Sproul on this day in Black August. Lord, hear our prayer. Aaron Walton says, my dad turned 73 today. Lord, hear our prayer. We pray for continued long life and longevity. And Lord, hear our prayer over Freedom Church of the Poor, the Cairo Center, and all of our network leaders across the country. Lord, hear our prayer. Cover us, and may no hurt, harm, and danger come to us, but gird us up for the next leg of this journey. Open our hearts and our minds that we understand this moment, this Kairos moment, and this time. Prayers for the people. Thank you. Ciara.
Thank you so much, Reverend Savina, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We're going to wind down a little bit early today, but for those of you all on Zoom, if you want to stick around after we close out the live stream, I just want to share with you all what's coming up this Black August season. Thank you again for joining this evening. This Wednesday, we're going to have a Bible study led by Aaron Dorsey of Black Christians for Palestine. Next week, next Sunday, for our second service of this Black August season, we're going to have the services titled Beatitudes, after, yes, the passage in the Bible, but also the way in which Sweet Honey and the Rock sung it. And it will be a songs in the key of resistance service. And so we'll have artists and organizers share songs, poetry, prayers, and other forms of art and culture to lift up our patron saints of Black August, Dr. Bernice Reagon, Paul Robeson, and many others. We'll have our following Bible study again that following Wednesday. We'll be joined by Minister Jessica Anderson, a beloved favorite of Black Christians for Palestine. And Sunday, August 18th, our service Ought to Be a Woman, that is a song that was based off of a June Jordan poem that Sweet Honey and the Rock sung. And we'll be honoring revolutionary women and the struggle for liberation. We'll have our Bible study on Wednesday, of course, and then the Sunday, August 25th, This Little Light of Mine, we'll be looking at spirituality and wellness in our revolutionary movement. How do we keep each other safe? How do we honor each other in this struggle and take care of each other? And our final service of Black August is actually September 1st. I know that's not August, but February is so short, so we're just going to take over, an extra week. But that will be our service, Give Your Hands to the Struggle, another Sweet Honey and the Rock song. And it will be our final service of the season that's focused on commemorating Labor Day and the international struggles of the poor and dispossessed. So please stay tuned. You can RSVP via the link. I'm sure someone put it in the chat, but FCOP sign up for our services, for our Bible studies, and we'll also share out that study guide as well. And so we just want to thank you again so much for joining us. We love you and have a good rest of your evening and a great week.